Hi, my name is Dr. Sarah Rogers with Idaho Naturopathic Medicine. And today with me is Glenda Bell, a lymphatic therapist with Lotus Wellness Therapies. Welcome, Glenda.
Hi, Dr. Sarah. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, I was really excited to interview you because number one, we're going into cold and flu season. It's always good to improve our immune system. And people are always asking me what they can do. And this is one of the things that you do is great for the immune system. It's
Absolutely.
also October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and this is also another good treatment to reduce your risks for all the toxin exposures that might trigger cancer. So I'm really happy to see you today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so you've been a massage therapist for how long?
Since 1993, so 28 plus years is when
Oh,
I first went to school for massage therapy and took my first lymphatics class in
nice.
1993.
Right, and you're now teaching about lymphatic in the community.
I am teaching not only in the community, but I do have a couple of clinics that I go to. There's a clinic in Santa Monica that I have taught at pre-COVID, and I am happy to teach about the lymphatic system, whoever will listen to me.
Yes, I've learned that about you.
Yes, yes. It is a passion of mine.
Right. I think it's a great passion. We need more lymphatic therapists or more people to understand what the lymphatic system is. So I know you have your own unique take on the lymphatic system, but just as a general overview for people who might not know what we're talking about, the lymph system is sort of a waste retrieval as well as an immune delivery system. So it goes from, you might have felt like if you ever felt sick, you could have gotten some little enlarged lymph nodes underneath the jaw. That's typically along the front or back of the neck. We have lymph nodes all over the body, but that's not just the only lymph organs. We have um, the thymus gland initially is where our T cells develop, and also the bone marrow where our B cells develop. And then we also have tissues that surround where the outside meets the inside. So that ring of tissue around the inside of your mouth, the adenoids or the tonsils, those are actually there to catch any pathogens that pass through your mouth. And then when you take those out, you might have a reduced risk for, or an increased risk for getting a little more sick. But they found that that's not a big deal for getting really sick if you get that out. The other ones might be the tissue that surrounds the urethra or the digestive system. There's a lot of lymph tissue back down there. And then the spleen is also a specialized lymph tissue.
Absolutely.
So we have a whole, sorry, I've got a cat here. We're gonna see what she does during this. The whole system is designed to get, there's a tail, sorry people. There's I lost my concentration.
That's okay. You have to
Anyway,
love the fur babies.
it's yes, exactly. So the whole concept is as the blood vessels go smaller and smaller into the capillaries, there's a little leak of fluid that goes from the blood into the tissues, and not into the cells, but the tissues. And then what happens is some of that goes back into the blood, but a bunch of it doesn't, and the lymph tissue will pick that up, the lymph canals pick that up along with other waste products to deliver to the greater system to get disposed of.
Absolutely.
And then we also use the lymph tissue, the lymph, when you eat fats, it doesn't go straight into the bloodstream, it goes into the lymph to deliver, which is why it's important we have healthy fats, because that's going to go all over the body.
Absolutely.
And then we also have there was one more thing and I forgot it. So why don't you take over from there before I introduce myself more?
Absolutely.
Give me your take on the lymph tissue.
Oh, absolutely. The everything you said is absolutely correct and is so dynamic. The way that those tissues, the way those organs, the way the fluids interact is such a dynamic process. So if you think about the body at its very basic structure, we're just cells stacked on cells, stacked on cells, cell, trillions of cells all stacked up on top of each other. And these cells have organized themselves to do things for us. So we have liver cells and we have muscle cells, and each of those cells has their own job to do. But every single cell has to eat. It takes in sustenance. Every cell has to breathe oxygen. Every cell has to drink water. Every cell has to reproduce, and every cell has to poop. Cell poop is called by many different names: metabolic waste, lactic acid, uric acid, CO2. It's just what's left over after the cell has done its job. But when these cells are hungry, they can't run to the market. And when they have waste, they can't go anywhere either. So these cells have this amazing system of fluid that takes care of them. That fluid in your body can be divided into two kinds. You have the red fluid, which is the blood, which is always called blood, no matter where it's found. And then you have the white fluid, which when scientists are looking at the white fluid, all they see is wet. So they have to name the wet where they're looking. So if they're looking in the lymphatic vascular structures, they name that wet lymph. When they're looking between the cells, they name that wet interstitial fluid.
Right.
And when they're looking in the cardiovascular structures, they name that white part of the clear part of that fluid, the blood plasma, the blood serum, the white blood. It's even called by many different names when it's in the cardiovascular structures. But you have blood and white blood, so red blood and white blood that is coming through a pipe that they call an artery, up to a faucet of sorts that's called a blood capillary. What filters out of that blood capillary is actually the clear fluid. They should call it a plasma capillary, because if what filtered out was blood, we'd be bruised everywhere. That's what a bruise is that blood capillary has actually been damaged, and you can actually feel the womp, womp, womp of that heavier fluid coming out. But ideally, in an ideal situation, it's the white fluid that filters out because it's bringing food to the cells, basically, that live in a sink of sorts, a basin. So the white fluid is filtering out of that blood capillary, bringing, say, a big old chunk of magnesium to the cells, and it says, "Hey, you guys, I've got magnesium. Who wants magnesium?" And the cell is like, "I'm so hungry today." So that fluid will actually float that food to the cell. The cell will gobble it up, and then it will poop, because that's what happens when we consume magnesium. Rather than let that cell wallow in its waste, that fluid will pick up that waste and put it in the drain of that sink. The drain of that sink is called a lymph capillary, and it moves that fluid and that waste to lymph nodes that are like little washing machines, because they have to clean that fluid, because that fluid is ultimately going to get dumped back in the cardiovascular structures and get called lymph again. Before you turned on that blood capillary and you let that fluid filter out, if you ran out and you got a bunch of leaves and you put them in the drain of that sink, you'd have a problem very quickly. So what I do as a lymphatic therapist is I pull leaves out of the drain, so the cell waste can go where it needs to go, so it can be cleaned, so there's no backup of fluid, swelling, inflammation. That's all backup of fluid. And that those lymph nodes that when they're filtering that fluid, they dump that fluid back in the fluid gets dumped back in the cardiovascular structures. And if that doesn't happen, we don't have the fluids that we need to continue the process to feed more cells.
Right, exactly. So tell me, so one of the things that I'd like people to know is all the things that would be a symbol of those leaves.
Oh my goodness, putting fuel in your vehicle, smelling those fumes of fuel. Those are leaves in your drains. When you get tissue that's damaged, those lymphatic vascular structures are so fragile that anytime you get a bruise, that's lymph backup. Anytime you see a mark on your skin, when you see that mark on your skin, what you should hear is help, because what's happened is you've stopped the flow of lymph. And because
so what sort of marks are you talking about?
Bras, mark from your bra, socks that are too tight, if you wear a watch that's too tight and you take it off, and there's
like an indentation.
An indentation, absolutely. So when and I'll speak to the ladies as a belt also for men. Will stop the flow of lymph, because the fluid from your feet actually has to come all the way up here, because this is where it gets dumped back in the cardiovascular structures. And those structures are so fragile that anytime you constrict them, you're creating leaves in the drain, because that fluid can't move properly. So I mentioned the putting fuel in your vehicle. Surgeries are actually cutting those lymphatic vascular structures, and the fluid has to find a different way around, and sometimes it doesn't find a different way around. If you've had a surgery and you still have swelling a year and a half after surgery, that means that that fluid has not found its way around, but we can shift that. Anything that is tight, swollen, or aches is an indication that your lymphatic system is challenged in some way. So more leaves in the drain. Your lymphatic system is a vibratory system. Your lymphatic system, picks up if you walk into a room, there's been a huge fight, nobody's saying a word, but you can feel it. You're feeling that with your waters. Your waters are actually how you feel. So a harmful word, you know how if someone says something that hurts, it hurts the entire way in your body. You can feel that. You can feel joy from head to toe. You can feel sadness from head to toe. That's because it's in your waters.
Right.
It's because it's in your lymph. So a harmful word, there's so many things. Grief can be leaves in your drain. Surgeries, definitely drugs,
Right,
pharmaceuticals.
so that would be sort of like you mentioned the gasoline.
Yes.
And Idaho doesn't have those things that reclaim the gas, so you might want to
Correct.
put the thing in and then walk away and do all your windows or whatever as you fill your gas. But it's also other toxins like the drugs, whether it is pharmaceutical drugs or illicit drugs.
Right.
And you were saying emotions, so emotional abuse or physical harm, that sort of thing can all sort of stagnate and cause that swelling. And so it's sort of that,
Absolutely.
because what you described is like it's flowing in, providing nutrients, and then it's flowing out and it's getting rid of the waste, and then it's collecting it all and putting it into the bigger system, going back to the circulatory system, which can then go into the liver, which then helps clean things out and puts it out into the bile or goes out through the kidneys. So that's another reason why we want clean lymph, is that the kidneys are really sensitive to toxins.
Absolutely.
The liver is a little tougher,
Yeah.
given the right nutrients. It's designed to really transform chemicals into something more water soluble to get rid of. But the kidneys can be really sensitive to those toxins and how much is going through every day.
Kidneys are sensitive. And the other thing about like people who think that they have low back pain, they think it's musculature. They probably need to pay attention to their kidneys. Drink water. If you have low back pain, please drink water. The other thing I wanted to mention is food. Food can definitely be, if it's food that doesn't nourish your body, but instead creates inflammation, that's a whole bunch of leaves in your drain.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So tell me what a lymphatic massage feels, how it's the same or different from a traditional sort of relaxing massage.
Sure. So I have for many years did traditional, what they call lymphatic drainage work. And it's very effective. It's very powerful work. But over the years, I've been doing this for 28 years. Over the years, bodies have taught me that what I was taught in a school was not necessarily what was happening in their body. So if you realize that you're this tube of circulating water, if I crimp my tube at my ankle, water's coming in, but not as much water is going out. So what it's going to do is fill up space and fill up space and fill up space, because it doesn't have a way to move. So you're not going to feel it till it's got no place left to go, which might be on the, at your neck or your shoulder. And so that's all tight, but that's not where the issue is. The issue's in your ankle. And once we pull the leaves out of the ankle, say you sprained the ankle or you broke the ankle. Once we pull the leaves out of the drain in the ankle, then this lymph can move. So I have stepped away from drainage work as my go-to and instead have developed a system whereby I ask the clients, where are the leaves in your drain? Where would you like me to work? And so it's a much more effective way to move lymph, in my opinion. Not to say that drainage work is not effective. It is. It's just not the way I work any longer. Because if you don't move the leaves out of the drain, the fluid's going to come back. And so you have people coming back and coming back. And eventually you'll move enough leaves out of the drain that this, it might take a while, but it will go away. But it's much more effective to just pull the leaves out of the drain at the ankle.
Where we can find it. Right.
Yeah. So when you come to my office the very first time, my home studio, I have a very detailed intake form because your life story carries the vibration in your lymph. Your lymphatic system carries your life story. And so if the answers that you give on an intake form is basically the compass that I use to guide my query process. So my initial session is a little lengthier because there is a lengthy intake form. So after you've filled out an intake form and we've had a discussion about it, then I have you lie down on a table. I basically work with the feet. And the way I like to describe it to people is if you've ever gone to give someone a hug and they want a hug, you can feel them come towards you. If you go to give someone a hug who doesn't want a hug, you can actually feel them pull away. And that's the sensation that best describes the way it feels when I'm querying the lymph. So I just work with the body's lymphatic system with my query process and find out where the body would like me to work. Because the lymphatic system is a vibratory system, you can't push water.
Right.
If I I'm going to hold this up. If I put my hand in this jar of water, the water would displace. To move water, you have to coax it. So that coaxing process can involve many different tools: sound therapy, word therapy, internal vibrations. I've actually had people hum and the swelling goes away.
So it's a very gentle, it's much more gentle.
It's very gentle.
Can people
I
feel what you're doing while you're working?
Say that again.
Can people actually feel the massage or the vibrations as you're working them? Is it really, really subtle?
It is not subtle. If you've ever been in bed at night and you feel like a twitch or a jerk, that's lymph. So I get a lot of twitches on my table because lymph is trying to go somewhere all day long, and you're in what's called a sympathetic nervous system. That's your nervous system is in active mode. When you relax, your body goes into what's called parasympathetic. That para just means next to. So it goes into parasympathetic, which is where we rest, we digest, where your lymph moves, where healing happens. So when you're in bed at night and you get like a twitch or a jerk, that's lymph that has been trying to go somewhere, and you finally relaxed enough where it can go. There are some other things that'll twitch you at night, but on my table, I get a lot of twitches, a lot of itching. So if I'm working on, say, the pinky toe, and my client scratches behind their ear, the gallbladder meridian runs behind this ear. So if I'm working on the gallbladder toe and they scratch up here, I know we've pulled the right leaf out of the drain, they're feeling it move. Nice. So itching, twitching, ache, a deep, deep ache where you can't really touch what's hurting, but it feels like it's pulling so deeply. That's lymph. And oftentimes we'll get those mechanisms started. The very first structure that fluid encounters when it enters the lymphatic structures is called a lymph capillary. And that lymph capillary is kind of like a sponge. It's like, come on in if you want. The next structure that fluid encounters are these bicuspid valves that pull that fluid to a tube that squeezes that fluid to the next bicuspid valves. When this is happening, but you have too many leaves in the drain and no fluids getting through, it pulls air. It's a vacuum. So you feel that vacuum is that deep ache where you can't really get.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely. So if we pull the right leaf out of the drain, fluid gets in there, it's pulling fluid now, which is what it's supposed to, and the ache goes away. So a deep ache is, oh my goodness, it's such an indication for lymphatic work.
So who do you think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. So the dynamic of the work as a person is on the table can be very relaxing, very calming, but it may not feel gentle always.
Okay, got it.
Because they'll feel twitches and they're like the The nose is often endocrine lymph that can be challenged, and the liver lymph can show up in the mouth. So people be twitching, and for me, it's awesome because I recognize that we're moving what we
You're
need
on,
to. Yeah,
you're on the right path.
yeah.
So who do you think would be good candidates
Uh,
to come and see?
anyone with lymph.
Well, yes, but is there anybody specifically where you're like, this would be really, really helpful for certain populations?
Absolutely. Anybody with lymph, I'll start with that. Anybody who's had an injury, because any injury is going to damage lymphatic vascular structures. Pre and post-op, we can get the lymph flowing so that the surgery, the healing that happens post-op doesn't have as many leaves in the drain that it has to go around. And then post-op, we can move those leaves that are from the anesthesia, from the tissues healing. Well, that would digress just a moment. Fibromyalgia is definitely lymphatic issue. Anything that is tight, swollen, or aches. Someone who has a birthmark, that's often endocrine lymph that has been it's often endocrine lymph, which can show up as many different manifestations in the body.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see, anybody who's gone through grief. I just got to work with a gentleman who his brother died 22 years ago. He has been holding on to grief for 22 years, and it's I'm not diagnosing, but in those 22 years, he's had to deal with a lot of physical issues, prostate issues, shoulder issues, arthritis. He's got so many leaves in his drain. We were able to take him into this place where he could connect with that grief. And I can't say what's going to happen afterwards, but we get those leaves out of the drain, the fluids start flowing, and healing actually can happen.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So grief care, if anyone who's in a detoxification program.
Right. I was just thinking that.
Please come in with for lymphatic work, because we can get those leaves out of the drain. Anything that feels fat is just stuck lymph. Anything that is, if you well, not even consistently, but someone who, after you've eaten a meal, if you sneeze 3 or 4 times, that's lymph. Your lymph is trying to tell you that you have just eaten something that has challenged your lymphatic system, and your lymph is trying to change it. Your immune system is the immune functions of your lymphatic system is trying to change the way you're vibrating with that food.
Right. And I always say, when somebody's like, instead of, if things are coming up rather than down, whether it's acid reflux or burping or hiccuping, and now you're saying sneezing as well, which is great. It's going in the wrong direction. It's like your body's like saying, no, this is not a good thing. I want it out. This is
Get
not
it out
for me.
Get it out. Yeah.
Get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing, to listen to the body. I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you would like to add?
I would be so honored to work with anybody who's interested in working with me, because the lymphatic system is your magic. It is the way you heal. It is the way you feel. It is the way you can understand when things are right in the world. And it's the way that will signal you when something is not right.
Right. And I know personally how excited you are when people get well.
Oh, my goodness. It's such an honor to be able to participate in their journey. And everyone's journey is unique. And the shifts that can happen can be really profound. And they can be really subtle as well. Yeah, they can be really subtle. They can be really subtle, because those leaves in the drain, you don't really recognize them as leaves in the drain until they've gotten so much stuck behind them that you can't ignore it any longer.
Right. It goes from like slow drain to like complete blockage. And
absolutely.
Yeah. It just creeps up on you. And it's really easy to do all the things that you talk about that clog up our lymph, they happen every day. And when you're talking about the emotional issues and the stress over the last couple of years, there's been a lot for a lot of people. So there's other things that, just moving and exercising is also going to move lymph.
Absolutely.
But what you have is a specialized practice for people who are really struggling.
Yeah.
But for people who are just generally day to day, the best thing you can do to move your lymph, number one, is to avoid those toxins as much as possible. Make sure your digestive system is intact. Maybe do something called dry skin brushing.
Absolutely.
Before you bathe. And then also movement, because as you said, the lymph tissues are really leaky. So they don't have a lot of muscular structure. And so when you move your muscles, you're actually helping pump and supporting that lymph system. So
absolutely.
So those are generalized things that we can all do every day. And then not eating foods or chemicals or drugs that are not good for you. So
yeah, the other thing that I would add is to have a practice of deep breathing. Three deep breaths. 3 deep breaths.
Yeah, not this breath, but
not this breath. But your lymphatic vascular structures, I don't know that I can get high enough for you to see, but your lymphatic vascular structures come up through the torso, through the middle of the torso, and dump back up here. So what you'd want to do with good posture, don't worry about your shoulders. Your shoulders don't worry about it. Raise your sternum. Give those structures away, the room to move those fluids. So when you think about your posture, don't worry about your shoulders so much, but raise your sternum. And the other thing is, please don't wear anything that's tight. Please don't wear anything that stops the flow of lymph, because that's so hard on the lymphatic system. When you take, ladies, when you take your bras off and you get that, thank you. That's actually a thank you from your lymphatic system that it actually can flow. Or you take your tight shoes off and when you remove something and your body goes, that's your lymph saying, thank you, I can move. So when your lymph is flowing, you feel better.
Right. Or you don't even notice that you're not feeling bad.
Right.
You just go on with your day because you're feeling fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Glenda, this has been delightful.
Thank you.
And we will be putting Glenda's information at the end of this video. So if you'd like to contact her, schedule an appointment, or find out more about Glenda, it will be on the end of this video. So thank you so much for your time today, Glenda, and all the information that you shared.
Dr. Sarah, I am so grateful for you. Thank you for helping this community the way you do, because so many people have been helped by your work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's my gig.
I know, isn't it wonderful to have people feel better?
Yes, it is. It's amazing. It's always amazing to me. I'm like, I just gave you the information you needed to do it. I'm not the one actually healing people. They heal themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.